You're listening to the Sleuth podcast, all about the business of dentistry, hosted by yours truly, Greg Essenmacher, a fixable arch dental expert and founder of G&A Consult, speaking with industry leaders on the dental landscape from their perspective. Welcome, everyone. Episode number 100. I cannot believe that we're at episode number 100. Yes, indeed, the Sleuth has made it to the century mark. My name is Greg Essenmacher. I'm your host of the Sleuth podcast. I appreciate you listening. And I just have to say, when I started this, episode number 1, I could not have imagined that we would be at this point at episode number 100. And so for this episode, celebrating the 100 mark, the century mark, we're not going to have a guest. It's just me. Well, I don't want to say that. There might be a few surprises in store. However, I do want to celebrate some landmarks, some milestones here at the Sleuth podcast. So in 2024, and well, in the last year, let's just talk about the last year. It was in 2024. I know we're just a little bit into 2025 now, a few months in, but the Sleuth podcast grew by 66%. Thank you so much to all of you who have downloaded, followed the show, subscribed, liked, especially switching platforms. I know that was a little bumpy for some of you. And we're actually in 25 countries. We have listeners in 25 countries. And the most popular, the top country outside of the United States, is Singapore. And the second most popular country is Germany, and specifically the city of Frankfurt. So I'm very popular in Frankfurt. It could be my last name, Essenmacher. I don't know. Could be. And thank you so much to those of you who listened to the most popular episode in this past year, and that was Dr. Eric Roman. What a beautiful soul he is, and what he shared all about his journey. And one thing that I really loved during his episode, if you haven't listened, please go back and listen, was the fact that he had regrets about selling his business not even a year after. It was literally days after selling his business. So him and sharing all of his great insights. You know, if there's one thing that really struck with me during those first 100 episodes with all of the guests that I had on, we talk a lot about vulnerability. We talk a lot about leadership in dentistry and self-care. That really was a great theme that came forward with so many of our guests. It reminds me of Dr. Taryn McCarthy, and when she shared about her hitting her breaking point and really just selling her practice and didn't care what she got for it and really needed to go internal and find out who she was as a human being. And now helping others to be able to grow and expand their inner life through her business called The Biz of Happiness. And I consider her a good friend and just love the work that she's doing in the industry. And also it reminds me of Kyle Stanley, right? One of the co-founders of Pearl, right? AI company that's doing some incredible things in the world, and now really focusing on wellness and working with other clinicians, and whether they're in dental school or clinicians that have really not taken care of themselves or haven't really faced that demon, right? And whether it is through, addiction or, just mental wellness, or being challenged with all the challenges that they can be faced with, all of you are faced with, and even those of us on the entrepreneurial side are faced with, or in the manufacturing side that are faced with, all of the pressures and stress that come with trying to achieve and overachieve, and not looking at taking care of self and having balance and looking at our own well-being. And so those insights were just amazing by Kyle Stanley. And then, of course, Dr. Daniel Brisky, a co-founder of the Colorado Surgical Institute. Man, it was so refreshing to hear from him. I knew of him from my days at Neodent and helping his practice and watching him on his journey with Dr. Taylor Dune, and also with Dr. Mark Costas and them starting the Colorado Surgical Institute. But also the piece that I really resonated with is when he started talking about his journey and really needing to take time away. Right? I think he talked about like throwing on a backpack and just taking that 11-hour hike, or at times just taking time away from the practice, from family, and really being able to just connect with self and connect with nature in order to really get grounding and learn more about self in order to show up as a better human for others and those in his life. And those really started to affect me personally. And that was really amazing to hear guests come onto the show and to be able to create a space for them to be able to share so openly about what they're passionate about. And that really is what the Two Sleuth has been all about, is just creating space for others. And then, of course, on the business side, right, who can forget guests like Spencer Walker and Jake Goetz, talking about all those golden nuggets about marketing, right? Especially in the full arch lane, which is what G&A Consult is all about. My business is all about. And talking about case acceptance and some of the key takeaways that they shared with us about what it's like in the touch point of the patient journey and what really resonates with them. All of these pieces together, both on the business side and on the personal side and the self-care and the wellness side, really has rounded out the first 100 episodes of the Tooth Sleuth podcast. And I just couldn't be more pleased and more honored that all of my guests that have been a part of this journey through the first 100 have really shared with that. Hey there, it's Greg Essenmacher, host of the Two Sleuth podcast and founder of G&A Consult. At G&A, we specialize in transforming full arch dental practices, teaching, coaching, and training teams to deliver an exceptional patient experience, from that first call to delivering final smiles. Whether you're a practice owner, a DSO executive, or a regional leader looking to expand your full arch program, boost same-store sales, or unlock the true profitability of full arch cases, we've got you covered. Ready to see how full arch can elevate your practice? Visit the show page or book a discovery call today. Let's turn your potential into results. It's interesting because as I reflect on this first 100, one of the biggest challenges, I would say one of the hardest things, honestly, with the podcast was really trying to figure out, what is the direction of the Two Sleuth podcast? And for those of you who are regular listeners and have been from the beginning, and thank you for that, has really been, what did I want the Two Sleuth to become? Because from the very beginning, it wasn't specific to any particular lane or genre other than education and, the subtitled, all about the business of dentistry, which went in a lot of different directions. Was it going to be shining a spotlight for entrepreneurs to come into the industry? And I certainly had plenty of those on and be able to share their story and what they had to share, from Julianne O'Connor and the great work that she's doing with spelling it out. And those that are new into the industry and trying to find their way, Lana Rivera, and those that are consultants in the industry and those that are trying to help and serve others in that capacity. Was it going to be about growing G&A Consult and really just talking about full arch, specifically just the full arch lane, which would have been a specific niche and really only allowing those on that we're going to talk about that? Or really just providing a sense of joy and entertainment, which, that's my personality for sure, for those of you who know. Or it's going to be a blend of all and really just finding people who I resonate with and finding those that really spread joy and are all about adding to rather than taking from. And those in the dental industry, this industry that's been so good to me. And that really is part of what it's been. And one of the moments that many of you probably aren't even aware of that really personifies this. And it was, I met Dr. Mark Costas. I knew of him, and many of you know Dr. Mark Costas and many of his businesses that he has, DSI, Dental Success Institute, and many others. I met him at Dykema, at Dentistry's Got Talent. He was one of the judges, very kind, and had some really nice things to say when I was a part of that competition, and really lifted up some of the things that I did as a speaker. He invited me to come onto his podcast, and we did a podcast swap, and he was to be a guest on my show. And for some reason that day, the platform we use for the Two Sleuth podcast just wasn't working that day. He was so amazing and showed so much grace and, offered his platform, and we were able to record. But the point that I want to make is sometimes we build up individuals as these giants in the industry. And I certainly did that with Mark Costas. I'll admit that freely with all of you and be a little vulnerable here for a moment. He's just another human being. And it was so beautifully put by Margaret McGuckin, a good friend of mine in the industry, at the close of her episode. And if you didn't watch it, please go back and watch it, because I try to open up at the end to share with guests and say, is there anything you want to share with my listening audience that you haven't had a chance to share yet today? And her close, Margaret's close, was so beautiful. She simply stated, this is a wonderful industry, the industry of dental. Just reach out. just reach out. Don't be afraid to reach out. There's so many are willing to give a helping hand. And the vast majority, I have found that to be true, especially out of these 18 years that I've been in this dental industry. In the last 3.5 that I've started G&A Consult, my consulting business, and I've been super fortunate to be successful in whatever terms that you want to use, right? But it's really been successful through this attitude of servant leadership, of talking to others about how can I help you in your business? And it really has come back to me tenfold, and I'm super grateful for it. She said, just reach out. Most will reach back and are willing to help and mentor and be able to share their experience with you. And that certainly is true, that I've found. And I just think it's amazing. And that really showed me in such a great way that Mark was so graceful and so kind and be able to share those assets with our team that does post production for the Two Sleuth podcast. And I just wanted to lift that up here and let everybody know that just reach out. People are really willing to help. It's not a competition. We're really here to help and serve and ultimately to help more patients to be able to create more beautiful smiles in this industry. And I just think that's wonderful. As most of you know that are regular listeners, you know my running segment, right? Called What the Sleuth is Going On. I would be remiss if I didn't lift up Jamie Stell Levine, right? I still call her Jamie Stell before getting married and has a beautiful daughter that I've been blessed to get to know. And Brittany Matthews, who's just an amazing friend as well. They actually helped to create that running segment before just when, the Two Sleuth podcast was in incubation phase. And so thank you to the two of them for helping me create that running segment. And then also the questions that we've come up with are just fascinating. And some of the just outrageous, outlandish answers to the questions from our guests have been just so much fun. What comes to mind, Laura Brenner, with the question of what's the worst bad breath you've ever encountered, and Dr. Laura Brenner, and I say doctor like that, and you know the joke, Laura, which is just so fantastic, of Lola Bees. She helps, those that want to really do side gigs out of clinical to be able to transition into their next career. Man, with the what's the worst bad breath you've ever encountered, her answer is a guy she dated in high school and called it, he had poo breath. I mean, just to hear another adult, and she's just been such a good friend in the industry. It was so much fun. And Eric Roman, who I've actually mentioned, his answer to the inventor of any dental product, when he started talking about nitrous, I really thought that he and I were going to just completely lose it and have to like re-record the last part of our episode, because both of us, I think, just went back to we'll just say our younger, crazier days. And it really almost got off the rails. And so thank you for that memory and going back and remembering that and listening and laughing so much for sure. Just in general, the answers to all of those questions, as I pull up some of the graphs and talk about it, that first question, the worst bad breath, perio breath, like, is such a prominent answer and theme. Nearly 1/4 of all guests had like lifted that up. Obviously patients, because there are, a number of clinicians that have been on the show. I think is just so much fun to talk about. And then, what's one thing you would change about your smile? What would it be? How beautiful that nearly 1/4 of all the respondents simply said nothing. I love my smile just the way that it is, and I accept myself just the way that it is. And what a beautiful way for it being representative of the vulnerability that guests on the Two Sleuth podcast show. And thank you to all the guests who did share that. And then the last, which is, if you could go back and be the inventor of any dental product, which one would you choose and why? So many. It really was close of all the respondents. Nearly 23% said some form of the dental implant. I think they were just placating the host, which is okay. I think it's hilarious that they did, right? And about 20% said the toothbrush, right? Or some type of electric toothbrush or something about the toothbrush, which is just so simple. And I can tell you that as somebody who is passionate about the Give Kids a Smile program, sponsored through the ADA, the American Dental Association, I just think that something as simple of those that just don't have the ability to brush their teeth because they don't have the tools to do so. I just thought that that was just so heartwarming that so many lift that simple tool up. So thank you to all the listeners of that. I just think it's so fantastic and so wonderful. Um, when I reflect back, if there's one thing that I could tell my earlier self in episode one, it really would just be simply to be more authentic. As many of you have been on this journey with me in the last, 10, 12 episodes of the Two Sleuth podcast, you've probably seen more and more of my personality come out because that really is my true authentic self. And earlier episodes, I was more reserved and more scripted. And I think that that isn't my true authentic self, just as my journey throughout dental and throughout my life. And many of you have heard my story throughout listening to the Toot Sleuth podcast, or if you've gotten to know me, my true self is starting to come out more and more. And I am so blessed that all of you are starting to listen more and more and share with your friends and like and subscribe and engage in all of the social media. And so I just want to thank you all for that for sure. And just to give you a little something something of what's coming up on the next 100 episodes of the Tooth Sleuth podcast, the segment will stay the same of what the sleuth is going on. It is so much fun for me and for our listening audience and for our guests. And I can't thank everyone enough for how much fun that has been and continues to be. There are some exciting things coming up in the next 100 episodes, and some of the guests that are coming up, just right out of the gate in the first 5 or 6 or 7 episodes that are ready to launch and publish here. I am so excited for you to hear those that are really movers and shakers in the industry and a part of Full Arch and really starting to make some impact. I couldn't be more grateful. And I just encourage all of you to please share, like, subscribe. And I am humbled by all of you who listen on a regular basis, stop me at conventions, at workshops, in the hallways, whenever you see me, and share your little tidbits of stories about what you know, what you've heard, and that you're a regular listener. I am honored and humbled and grateful, and thank you for listening to the Two Sleuth podcast for the first 100 episodes, and here's to another 100 coming up soon. Thank you so much. I'm honored by your time.
Hey there, this is Dr. Eric J. Roman, and Greg, congratulations, man. I can't believe this. 100 episodes of the Two Sleuth podcast. Bro, something to be commended. You know something that I will say that I enjoy most? I'd love to say it's all your guests, and I do love them. I do enjoy them. But I think what I enjoy most, Greg, is you. It's how you show up. It's the introspection and the questions and everything that I get to appreciate about who you are and how you serve your audience by just being inquisitive and taking joy in what they do. That's my favorite thing. And here's to a couple 100 more. Congrats.
Congratulations, Greg, on your 100th episode. This is Dr. Laura Brenner, founder of Lola Bee's Career Coaching, and I'm so excited for you that you've reached this amazing milestone. Huge congratulations. My favorite thing about your podcast is you, because you're always so funny and you're so much fun. And as a guest, you make it so easy to participate and have really good things to say. So congratulations to you, and here's to 100 more.
Hey, Greg, it's Steve Craig, one of your favorite tourist friends, back from episode 55. Big congrats on the 100th episode of the Two Sleuth podcast. A couple of things I like most about the podcast is just the weekly opportunity to crawl up inside your head, which I have to admit is kind of scary at times, Greg. But the other is just the way you've opened up the opportunity to showcase a lot of the players that live and work inside the dental industry. So keep up the great work and keep being you, Greg.
Hey, Greg, Zach Anderson here from Wonderful Finance. Huge congrats on the 100th episode of the Tooth Sleuth podcast. My favorite part of the podcast is that you're highlighting important topics and insights that industry professionals crave, and you're doing so with an infectious enthusiasm that make these relatable and easily digestible. So cheers to the next 100 episodes and beyond.
Greg, congratulations on 100 episodes of the Tooth Sleuth. I was thrilled to be a part of one of those, and wishing you all the success in the world for your next 100.
If you need help with converting lead calls into consultations, closing consults into more full arch cases, or creating a more strategic marketing message and branding for your practice or group, follow me for more tips or reach out to G&A Consult for a discovery call today.